on the language server. Oh, thank you.
Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, so yes, so we can, on the language server side, we can decorate every entry in this string with, let's say, some file or something, like using this type that we know. For example, local file search, like HTML tag, then content of the file, closing HTML tag, then again open the HTML tag, the content of the second file, closing HTML tag. But this all will be sent as just one big string. So wouldn't it make sense for backend to be very type agnostic and let client on the LSP to decorate those chunks with whatever we want, and then
I think we decided against that though for when we were doing code suggestions.
Why? I mean, it is much more flexible. It requires only release of only one package, just language server. While if we have a very hard-coded relationship with the prompt, this means that we will need to update this not only in the language server, but also in the AI gateway. And we have to do it for every, or even in monolith, maybe, we will have to do this for every single content provider, which is counterintuitive and not very efficient, in my opinion.
So I'm not sure. So is the suggestion to just use additional context as a simple wall of text and just inject it into?
Yeah, because after all, the way we send this to the LLM is just one big string, right? It's just one big chunk of text.
Well, I think when we were doing code suggestions, the reason why we decided to do the prompt construction on the code suggestions backend side is for prompt injection. Like they were worried about prompt injection.
Right. What I mean is we send the additional context still as additional parameter when we send prompt from, let's say, from Duo Chat. We send the prompt. So the query is one field and the context is another field. But the point is that this gives us flexibility in how we work with these things. And then on the language server side, we can say, okay, here are the files, and then we say file 1 content, file 2 content.
So you're saying construct the prompt on the language server
not the
side.
Not the prompt, construct the context, specifically the context, not the
prompt.
I mean,
but it's still constructing part of the prompt.
Kinda it's just part of the context. So what the real prompt in AI Gateway needs to know is that there will be additional context supplied in this particular field, for example, and that's what we sent as additional context. We formulate the prompt so that I don't know, like I'm really bad at prompting. That's why Anthropic hates me. We just formulate something that additional context is here, or like we formulate the task, because I've read somewhere that you have to start with the task.
What about merge requests? Because I think merge requests we're gonna only send like the context object without any content, and the backend is actually going to do a majority of the merge requests, data gathering, and they build the prompt and then send it. It's most of that's going to happen on the backend for merge requests, issue, context, etc. So in that case,
so
the
if
backend still needs to know the type of the context item, right?
If we only have a single field, additional context as a text, on the backend we have no control over it. So we can't even trim it properly. So we will just guess how to trim it. So you would need to do everything on local. And from API point of view, because it's not only you can use this API, it's all public API. Everyone can use it. It's I don't know. It's not very, so we have no control over this.
It sounds a bit dirty, I know.
There is a lot of small nuances. For example, you will enclose this additional context into some XML tag, but some providers work well with XML tags, some not. So if we decide to switch provider on AI Gateway side,
Yeah,
we can
I know.
do
then-
this.
Okay, got it.
yeah, that's another huge good
Then
point, yeah.
technically we have to redesign the context manager in order to do what? That's the
No, I mean,
question.
you don't have to redesign it. We have to figure out what this object
The
looks
retriever
like.
part, because the
Well, the
retriever now
retriever
just-
part's fine
yeah.
because we just for
No, it's
files, we
not.
just grab the text and then we inject
Yeah,
it
that's
into.
the thing. No, that's the thing. Like the current, and have you reviewed my MR? Man, you would
So-
spot that.
I'm sorry.
The current AI context manager returns all the content of all context items is just one big string. That's what it does.
No. Okay, I was a little bit I was confused about that. Now that makes sense. No, yeah, you have to be a return array of context items with content. So that's what I was saying is the context item when it goes back and forth between the language server and the UI, when the user's selecting it, it doesn't have
Right.
content. But
Yeah.
then when it's retrieved, we get an array of context items back.
And that's
with
what
the
we send
content,
to the backend.
and this has the file string. That's why I was saying content is associated with me and probably Vitaly as well on the back end, right? Is
Okay.
associated to the string that we're
Okay,
sending.
now it makes sense. And that's
Yeah.
That makes sense.
that's the object that we do send, that we not only get back from the backend when we query for, let's say, Duo chat history, but also the object that we send to backend together with the user prompt when the user, for example, asks a question in Duo chat. Is this correct?
No, that's just a content of this single file, and we have a separate field for user request. What user?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay. Let me give you an example again.
So could we get back to this ID field? We was talking about renaming,
Yes.
and I mentioned that we don't have to have the same name on the backend, and because we would need, if you decide to rename it tomorrow for something else, we would need to do it on the backend. But you can have.
Well, we
on
still
your
need to
side
rename
just-
the graph. We still need to rename the GraphQL parameter. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I was asking why. Because you can have adapter and you say, okay, his name, we treat it as ID. Because on the backend, it doesn't really matter how it names.
I'm just saying I think it would be less confusing if on
Yeah.
the front end side, we didn't have to remap it from ID to name. It would just, people would be like, what's going on? Versus like, you just send the object as is versus having to do any type of renaming or
It also
reformatting of the object.
simplify.
And then on the same
simplify
time,
debugging.
when we get it on back from the AI messages, right, we're gonna have to remap it again. Versus like, if we get the same object back, then we don't have to do any type of remapping or anything.
It's going to be two-step change. So first we need to change it on AI gateway because it's also receive name and injects into a prompt. And then we need to change in GraphQL.
Yeah.
But since
That's
no
what I
one
was
uses
saying.
it, it's probably not a problem.
Yeah.
I'm just.
And I can go through and rename it. I think it. If you want me to, it's just you just rename the parameters at that point, right? So there's ID, the type. So the type thing we need to figure out though, because there's going to be specific types like this. And that's why I was saying maybe it makes sense to have a category, and maybe we call it category or like subtype, right?
But can't we take the type from the, so we send this this mutation to GraphQL with a file. Let's say this is the representation of the file, right? So this is what we send to the GraphQL mutation. So the type will be specified for this piece of content. Can't backend take that type and use it, whatever it is there? Why do we need to hard code file or snippet in the backend? That's the part.
Because the prompt is going to be different per the type. Or if in the case of merge requests, if the type is merge request, then the backend is going to need to know to go ahead and fetch the merge request.
Right. This means the type is just specified as merge request, and then.
So then, but if we have a bunch of specific types, that means the backend is going to have to do a switch on their end for open tab for local file search. When open tab and local file search is kind of the same thing, on the backend side of things, which is what we're doing right now. To them, it's really just file, snippet, merge request, like the overarching categories, right?
Okay. If I provide the free text provider, what type is it? Text?
Snippet.
Snippet.
Yeah. Snippet for plain text. Okay. If I provide if I write the provider that fetches the content from a URL, is it snippet again?
We don't have it yet.
No, we don't. But like, it's really easy to write this provider, right? On language server, if I specify the URL, I want to get the content of that URL to be part of my additional context for my prompt. So I send type URL and then content that I want to be part of this content of that page. So how do we treat it? Do we introduce new type? Do we specify it as a snippet again? That's what I mean.
That's what we need to figure out. That's what the whole point of this meeting is.
Right,
So
right.
We got to design it.
And that's why I say that hard coding these things might be a bit tricky. Or if we
I think it'll be okay as long as there's a clear communication, clear
Right.
like schema, right? That's what the point is.
But yeah, but clear schema when we don't really know what type of providers will be there, like issue.
Well, we know.
Again,
We know this is what it's going to look like for issue, right? Like this. A lot of this is pretty. Like once you just start thinking it through the use cases, the issue would look like this, like HTTPS, GitLab, right? .com, issue, whatever, 1, 2, 3, right? That's the ID.
Why would it look like a URL? For issue, I would assume ID to be just ID of the issue.
Or well, because the problem
just 1, 2, 3, 4 here.
1, 2. If it's 1, 2, 3, 4, how do you know what project it's associated with, right? Maybe the backend actually wants to know this, like maybe it makes sense to do project path plus the ID, right?
It's like GID, like all the issues.
Yeah, like the GID, exactly. Right? Yeah. So
okay,
probably
GID.
Be like GID. Yeah, so let's do GID as an example, right?
Okay.
So that would be the ID. Then the type would be really the type would be issue, and then content would be blank.
Yeah.
Because the backend's fetching it, and then any other metadata that the backend needs or the front end needs for that, like the IID, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know what else. Title, some title, right? The rest of the stuff that the UI is going to display, right? And maybe even the backend would use this metadata. Like this is what the issue with object would look like. And then you just think through all the different use cases, and this is what each one will have to provide. My issue is that now the backend is going to have to handle open tab, local search, etc. And that's what I was thinking. Maybe it makes sense to do type be like really the overarching type. So then the AI gateway prompts can be handled correctly. And maybe we do prompt type. What about that? Prompt type. Keep it super specific. So file, snippet, right? And then the type can be like a bunch of specific stuff that this is really the provider type.
But like, again, issue, what prompt type is it? Is it prompt type issue? MR, is it prompt type MR?
Prompt type looks more confusing. I don't even understand what.
Yeah, I don't think prompt type makes things any simpler to understand, really.
Okay, maybe category.
Let's call it category. Okay, let's call it category. So file. Okay, file is clear. Snippet seems like anything which is not falling into any other categories becoming a snippet, but issue is the separate thing. Merge request is the separate thing, right?
Yeah.
And technically,
And-
using snippet for really the code snippet and for free text doesn't really make sense to me. So I would add text as one of these things here.
Okay, as a larger, like a prompt. So essentially category is what's going to be used as the prompt on the back end.
Right, and then the type is going to be used by
the provider type,
right? It's technically
it's the provider type. This is the provider type, so it really should be provider type.
But
I think.
Okay, but backend isn't interested in this part, right?
No.
Provider type is something that is local to language server, right?
Or the monolith, right? If the monolith front end is fetching something, they have a certain provider type they're going to implement.
Yeah.
Right?
Wherever the implementation of AI Context Manager means language server and monolith. Okay.
That's why I was saying we need two fields. It seems confusing at first, but as long as we document it and the naming is correct, that's what the whole point of this meeting is, to like get it right? Which is hard to do, but.
So in the category, since we have text, can we drop now file and snippet?
And I would say even, I would say maybe context category. To be super specific. What were you saying? Drop file and snippet?
Yeah. Since we have text, why do you need this?
But how do
the
you
file? Well, file. I'm assuming you would name this to be file, right?
With a path.
Or like on the prompt, you construct it and be like, hey, this is a user's file, versus like on the prompt, you would say, hey, this is text. This is just Dennis's example. I don't think.
What does text mean?
Yeah, I would keep text out for now, but
I mean we can just say in the prompt keys additional context, and without saying it's file or snippet. I don't know if it makes sense for.
I don't know. I don't think, because we want to make the prompt as specific as possible. So I would keep text out for now until we need it.
So now this context category, like it has two functions. So if we have file and snippet, we add it to the context. If we have issue and merge request, we need to do an extra work. To fetch this and then add it again to a prompt saying this is issue.
And to make things funnier, there will be different mechanism for fetching issues and merge requests, right?
This is also will make requests slow, but since it's in the background job for chat, it's maybe not a problem. But every issue you include or merge request.
Or I was saying, like, people were saying, why don't we have the backend do the fetching? I think the client could also do the fetching, because it's already fetching in the data, right? I don't know. And we just pass the data and the content here.
Well, if we have GID for ID, we can just pull in the issue using GID, right? Using just regular API, we can fetch the information about the issue while user deals with the UI, finishes the prompt. In the background, we can fetch the issue and prepare it for sending, if that makes things simpler. But I'm still not convinced in the context category that we need this snippet thing separately. Why can't we use file category for snippets as well? Because those are kind of files.
Because a snippet, there can be multiple files, but there can be this multiple context item of the same file. And so the ID is going to be the file name plus the line numbers. When we do DaVinci, that's the example, is DaVinci. When we do DaVinci, it's going to have, you're not going to have the whole file for every, context item.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm just going to make a specific one for each one. So context category will be file. Provider type will be, let's just do open tab for now. Content will be this. That makes sense. Issue would look like this, except, do you like context category or should we name it something else? What do you guys like?
Yeah, can be context.
Does this make sense? Like, are we still have reservations? What do you guys think?
Provider type makes much more sense to me than context category, but the like.
Well, they're different. They're two different things.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that provider type rings the bell immediately when I see it. Context category is still something unknown, but we can stick to whatever works. Whatever works, I'm fine. Like context category.
I mean, if you guys don't like the names, let me know. I'm just throwing stuff on the wall, seeing what sticks. So this is the hardest part of our job, I guess, naming things. Vitaly, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I'm just thinking how it's gonna work with history, because now I see the code I was digging today, and it sort of prepares this message and stores into the memory or Redis, and then sends requests. And now we need to do something with issue and merge request. So right now it will just store the raw data into the history.
Yeah, and that's gonna be
huge. We cannot do this thing in the background job, because it will trigger background job and will send request to AI.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, like you'd have to extend the AI gateway to take certain parameters or something, right?
Don't know about the gateway, AI gateway, but just if I look this file name, I will send it. It's one of these. It's actually two files, one for GraphQL, one for this. We do this similar thing. Could you open this one?
Yep. Completions are Ruby. Sorry. Duo chat completions. Oh, here it is. Let me make this bigger.
We're probably somewhere background job involved, but on line 29, see, we built a message, AI message, and then save it on the next line into the memory. And then we have this on line 32, we send request to AI.
Oh, so in this here, you're gonna have to check. Wait, is AI message save? Do we build the prompt here? I thought we build the prompt on AI.
No. This is another question I have. So we store the prompt into the history, but where do we get it? If we move prompt to AI gateway, this is unclear part I haven't figured out. So we probably need to do all the things with issue and merge request before we construct this post message and save it. So it will be slow until the request reaches.
Unless the client passes the data, but yeah.
But even with the client fetching the data, then we need to make it smart and do it somehow in parallel with the things. But then again, then we introduce the latency, because we will need to send a lot of data from the client up to the
back,
to the monolith, and then to AI gateway. And
then we have a second class. Which one used by REST API, and there is now one which used by GraphQL, and they do the same things, but maybe not. I don't know yet. So
this
it looks like two different people was writing. We got the same task and to do something.
We didn't. We clearly didn't. We clearly didn't build this for thinking past like.
Man, that's technically like the way Duo Chat has been built wasn't about thinking through about future, right? It was about delivering things so that the upper management is happy. That's we are recording, okay, and we made the upper management happy. No, the point is that Duo Chat, we just didn't have time to think properly about different use cases. Like there were no use case for Duo Chat outside of Duo Chat when these things were written, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, REST and GraphQL is just two different entry points, but you need to meet the ends somewhere. But this one goes for, I don't know, probably a reason or maybe a mistake, but that's what I found out today. So I was looking where to to add this additional context so it will be stored. And I found 2 places, and then I started digging why it's 2 places, and they called from different parts.
Okay,
But we sort of do the similar thing. So
considering we spend a lot of time brainstorming now, would it make sense for us to just think about how we can design this, how we can architect this, considering these use cases for issue and merge requests, whether it's better to do it on the client and send it all the way to the monolith, to the API, or it's like, no, it's going to be huge.
So, all right. So what we need to do is just figure out for now the bare bones what we can get with this AI context item, and just think about how we can make it extensible. And that's why I was saying schema version. So that way we don't have to rename things, or like we can extend it. If we don't want to do that, I think we can get away with it for now. The main thing is this piece. If we don't like this, then we got to figure out how to handle this, because basically the language server in the UI needs this information to know what operations to do, and the backend needs this information so that it doesn't have to handle each one of these ones, right? Unless we say backend actually handles each one of these. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I have a feeling that we are trying to mix together things. But when it comes to like what do we call now context category, I don't really support Vitaly's point here that technically we have completely different handling for this category on the backend. So when it's file and snippet, backend gets the content, but when it's issue and merge request, backend needs to fetch those things. So I have a feeling we either have to get everything on the client or on the language server, or we have to fetch everything on the backend to make things kind of unified. And in this regard, we have to find the common ground, like have only, let's say, 3 things: file, issue, merge request. But again, then let's say like we add epic. Like, can we do anything with the epic? Probably not. In the context of this thing we discussed now, we have to think about how can we do it flexible so that backend doesn't need to adjust every time we add some context category. And probably
I think it's fine actually. So we will have list of these additional context items, and we just walk through them. Okay, it's file. What do? We populate for content. So we will use different strategies to populate the context.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Yeah.
It's a snippet. Okay, we don't do anything. We just took content. Is it issue? Okay, we need to fetch issue, whatever, description, list of comments, and build this content. Okay, it's a merge request. And so we will just have different strategies for every category.
Okay, can we at least have some default handling, which technically takes content from whatever came here? If backend doesn't know, isn't familiar with context category that came in, can it by default just toss it into the prompt so that it would be part of the prompt?
I don't think we should do that, because the prompt injection, people are going to be like, that's going to lead to prompt injection, right? Like that's the main.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to fly.
What do you mean? But what do you mean?
I mean
this. But content.
Angelo. Yeah.
Like Dennis is saying, like a prompt. Just have one thing where it's like free form or something, right? Like free form. And it just throws it in and just say, here's additional context, doesn't label it or anything. My point is, like, I don't know. I mean, at that point, you just let it be open and, but maybe it doesn't matter because like.
But it's the same as a file. You don't know what inside the file.
Yeah. It's actually, it's no different from file. Like you can create file with for
I mean, you can do prompt injection for the file for sure.
Yeah.
I think we did this file and snippet, and we did a difference for prompt just to make it. I don't really know if it's benefit much from this, saying this is file, this is snippet. For LLM, it's probably not a big deal. We can say here's additional content, and but we just need to group it somehow into, I don't know, like a pieces of content. So not just one wall of text, but
Okay, so
some names.
so-
I don't know if it's really helps
The
for
names, we
LLM
can use the
to-
same names that we name the categories here, right? Like file, snippet, issue, merge request, and we just group by this context category, and then we just
Yeah, actually,
list them
yeah,
within that
yeah.
category.
Maybe file snippet doesn't help much, but if you say this is issue,
Yeah,
I'm not sure. Well, you
So
don't know
actually,
this LLM.
why
You
don't
need
we
to
just move-
experiment with the prompt.
why don't we just do this? So that the backend, so the object looks good. We just move prompt provide. What did I just do? I'm sorry. We move this.
man.
I don't know what's going on here. So
Stop
we
clicking
move
everything.
this. I don't know why VS Code keeps doing that. So stupid annoying thing. Okay, so you see this context category and content. So we'll just leave it like this. Backend doesn't care about this provider type, and we just leave this as implementation detail in the metadata, which is a freeform JSON object.
Yeah, and so when we receive this additional context, we cut metadata and we don't pass it to a prompt, right? So we only pass to a
Yes,
prompt
yeah.
ID,
Yeah.
category, and content.
The content.
And into metadata, you can put everything you need for your local stuff,
Yeah.
but it will not go into prompt. Yeah.
Okay. So
And this one you can have a free form. So
Yeah, and,
Okay,
and in this case, we cannot have metadata as free form because but this is in the language server. We'll have to specify that it has to have provider type and
Yeah.
one
Well,
of the
I mean,
predefined,
yeah,
but that's,
we'll just do
that's different thing. Yeah.
you validate it on your side. On the
Yeah.
backend, we just
Yeah.
get it, save it.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
discard
that's it.
metadata, or actually, we still have to save it, right? In order when we retrieve the
Yeah,
for
we will
example,
save. We will say into history whole object, like all of this with metadata,
including
And-
metadata, right?
and,
Okay.
And when we return, when you fetch this AI messages, it will contain this as well as a JSON.
Right. Okay.
But
makes
when
sense.
we build a
Good.
prompt, we will just use a context category and
Yeah.
context
Context
content, which is I would rather drop this context
Yeah,
because
let's drop this context.
because we have this object and there is a context, there is a content, when there is additional content, and there is a context inside additional content. And
Yeah.
So you're saying just drop
Category-
the context and just
no,
do category?
the next one, the
Category and
Content.
content.
Okay, so
just
content
content.
and category.
Yeah, because it's already additional context. So
Yeah.
Do we like category or do we want to keep this as type?
yeah,
We
we can
don't
keep us type
care.
and we can ID keep us the name and we're done.
No. I think we should keep it as ID because I think the ID will be useful later on when we do the issue and merge requests. So the backend knows to parse the ID, right? As long as the ID looks correct.
It still can be inside metadata because we use ID, we inject it into a prompt. And if you put issue ID there, like 1 to 3.
Well, what I think is I don't think the backend should try to worry about what's in this metadata object because then
Yes, but I'm talking about
this can be
ID.
breaking at any time.
Yeah.
Yes. So in the
We
case
use
of
this ID, now it's named. We use this ID, we added to this information to a prompt. We say this additional content, the name of this additional piece of content is this one. If we will use the name of this ID, additional context is just a number, it doesn't provide any information for LLM.
Well, what I'm not saying for the LLM, I'm saying in the case, all right, so in the case of issue, right? We want this to be a GID, something that the backend can parse so that you can go and fetch the issue, right? You need some data to go fetch the issue.
So it probably needs to be inside metadata.
What I was saying is I wouldn't put it there. I would rename name to ID so that you can utilize this and not have to worry about this having any breaking changes. Does that make sense? Because this is going to be freeform.
Yes, but we right now we're adding this name into the prompt.
Yeah, in this case, in the case of the let me think.
because we treat it as
Maybe
a file
AI
name.
Gateway-
We just provide additional. Let me
But
find the file here.
technically,
just to show.
the addition of this to the prompt.
Okay, so what about
is
we just add a name then, right? Name.
Okay, so we're just adding ID for some
Yeah.
other reasons.
And rename type to category. So name ID, rename type to category. And the name, in this case, for the language server, it's going to be whatever. That looks good to me. What do you guys think?
1 second. I want to show you a prompt, so
You want to share screen or?
I will send you a file name. So I just need to find it. Give me a sec.
And oh, excuse me. And in this regard, Angelo, I will update the context manager so that it returns these objects, not just once, not
Yeah,
consolidates
and-
everything into one string, but returns the objects. Okay.
And the content will be, you just need to make sure the retriever populates this field. This
Yeah. Sure.
content field. Yep.
Sure. It will populate for every context item in the provider, and then send it back to the consumer.
Okay.
Yep.
Anthropic shared examples.
Yeah, and this
That
line.
Shared.
This for
examples.
code suggestions, but just to describe an idea.
Okay. Line 3.7. 3.7.4.
7.4.
Okay.
So right now they add this see related files,
Yep.
and we say yeah, so
File
we say
name,
the
go.
files provide a little bit above 370. So we say the files provided in related files tags below, and then the code snippets provided. So we describe what is it, and we use name as the file name here just to provide more information. And if we change name to ID, it will say
File ID.
I don't know. We can say here's the issue and this is issue ID, but this issue ID 1 doesn't provide any information to LLM.
What do we supply for?
Well, that's what I
for
was. That's what I was saying.
What name do we
Renaming. I think. That's what I was saying. I think it makes sense to rename it to from name to ID, so the backend can just change it to whatever they want when they build the prompt, depending on the type of the category.
Because
Depending on the
technically the name makes sense only for file, right? Otherwise, for
Yes.
issue, what is the name? Is it the title of the issue? Is it the GID? What's that?
Exactly.
So name makes sense only for the file.
Yeah.
But ID doesn't make sense with the same logic. What is ID for a file? What is ID?
So,
for a
and
snippet?
what I'm saying is, so the AI gateway accepts ID, and then if the name, if the category is file, then it just knows in the prompt to name it as here's the file name, versus when it's an issue, it knows to say, hey, here's the issue ID. It's just back-end implementation.
This works both ways. So
Wait a second. Can we make these things like? Can we
Yeah.
make sure that the ID is always there? Name is optional, and on the language server side, we can connect and say that name has to be populated only if it's category file. I don't know whether we can do this or
That's
not.
kind of confusing, but I guess
It is confusing, but like we are confused here. I would say let's go with ID. With name, it's just the for the categories where name doesn't make sense, language server doesn't send any name, and backend should accept that. No, seriously.
Vitaly doesn't seem happy.
They will have different. Yeah,
we can call it ID, we can call it name,
because
but it's
technically,
just
even
one thing.
for
What-
tell me,
what-
even for files, name doesn't make sense. If we send full bar from let's say src slash foobar and main slash foobar, they will both be named foobar, which makes no sense. So we have to name it path.
I think even just putting
case.
ID is fine. I think the LLM will not even care whether it's name or ID.
So what you're saying when you defend ID, you say it doesn't make sense. But when it's file, treat ID as a name, right? If it's snippet, treat ID as a name.
What I'm
If
saying
it's
is
issue, treat ID as an ID. And I'm just saying it works in both way. I can say, okay, if it's name, treat name as ID for issue and keep the name as a name for file. So it doesn't really matter how you call it. We can rename it. It's no problem.
However, from this,
I think we should call it ID and just remove.
All right,
name.
let's call it ID.
Yeah.
And this means that we should be fine with just one thing. Whatever we prefer to use it for, it's just one thing. For files, it's going to be path. For issues, it's going to be JID. For merge request, it's going to be, I don't know whether we have JID for merge request. Probably yes. So JID, and that's pretty much it.
This is what I think. This is good. I like this.
Okay.
Oh wait, we forgot provider type. Sorry, provider type.
This should be forbidden, really, Angelo, to have this sort of discussions at the end of European end of workday, because like I will accept anything now. I will complain tomorrow morning when I think about this
energy.
and I'm back to work. Yeah. So just please summarize this in that thread.
Okay.
And yeah, and
we'll post a recording as well.
Yes, we will argue tomorrow.
Okay, you guys, is this okay for now? Can we go with this? You guys like this? Vitaly?
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm the only thing that I'm
worried
about.
Potato, so.
The only thing I'm worried about now is that if we say we are okay now, then by the time I wake up tomorrow, Angelo will build the whole solution and will claim that this is how it's gonna be. This
is blocking, so I mean,
sure.
I'm pretty sure some person will come in a couple of days and say, what the hell is this ID? So it doesn't make sense. So just be ready for it.
Don't tell me you'll talk to Missy that she will come and complain about the ID. Like,
I will try to find someone to complain.
Look at this nonsense. No, let's have ID. Let's have category. Let's put all the nonsense into metadata, including provided type. And Angelo, please do summarize this in the thread. And thanks a lot for this wonderful discussion. Very funny.
I mean, this is really important because this is going to be the future of all the context, right? So
if this is the future of all the contents,
we're
in big troubles. So let's just take one step at a time. We are still going to work with open tabs now. It's great to think through the structure and think about how it scales for our future use cases. But for now, we are going to work with open tabs. That's what we have.
Let's not be married to it, but we need something to go with.
So right now we only accept file and snippet as type ID.
Yeah, it's going to be file, right?
I will keep it for now because we are not going to introduce issues tomorrow. So when we introduce, we will introduce a new value in the enum.
Okay.
Yeah. So all right. So I'll make a thread, and then we'll be able to rename it, go through the code, rename it, and then we should be good to go.
Okay.
So,
cool.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.